It's another Thunder Thursday in Oklahoma City. I'm Mike Sherman, sports editor of the Oklahoman. The Atlanta Hawks are in town, and so is the whole Thunder coverage team of the Oklahoman. I'm joined here in studio by columnist Barry Trammell. Joining us via remote, Thunder beat writer Anthony Slater, Thunder beat writer Eric Horn, and columnist Jenny Carlson. Guys, the Thunder's coming off a big 37-point win over the Memphis Grizzlies. We waxed poetic about it for a couple days. Spent a lot of conversation about it. Let's play fill in the blank. Barry, the win over Memphis was what?
Well, it's quite impressive. It's the best game of the year, dominated in a lot of different ways with a lot of different lineups. The starters were great. The small ball lineup was great. They really took Memphis apart, and we'd sort of been waiting on this team to show up like that, and they did. And so, you know, you like to think they've turned a corner and the lights come on. But the truth is they've not been that far away. All their road losses have been tight to good teams. So, I mean, let's not pretend that the Thunder was in some sort of malaise that they couldn't get out of. But it was definitely good to see them jump out like that.
Eric, you were there. The win at Memphis was?
Promising. I mean, it was the most fluid and consistent stretch of Thunder basketball I've seen so far this year on the offensive and defensive end. It seemed like once they went to that lineup with Serge Ibaka at the 5 and Durant at the 4 at the 6:50 mark of the second quarter, they really found a rhythm offensively, and they were really able to put Marc Gasol and Zach Randolph at a disadvantage. Russell Westbrook and Kevin Durant were great distributors, particularly Westbrook and Serge Ibaka in the pick and roll. And then it continued over in the third quarter with the normal lineup on the floor with Steven Adams and Andre Robertson. And Andre Robertson had about 9 points in the third quarter. So it really got closer to what I think Billy Donovan and the Thunder want their team to look like offensively and defensively. It was complete.
Jenny, Kevin Durant, if he was sitting right here, might say the Thunder win at Memphis was beautiful. What say you?
Well, that's a pretty good adjective. I will go with I'll go with encouraging. Is that what Eric said? Promising? I can't remember. Sorry, Eric.
I said promising.
All
And
right.
then I talked to a bunch.
All right, I'll go encouraging. That lives in the same house as promising. But here's why I think it's promising, and this is something that Eric and Anthony and I talked about on the Thunder Buddies podcast yesterday. Check it out if you haven't yet. Was the fact that the Thunder dictated style against a team that for a long time has dictated style to them. Every time the Thunder and the Grizzlies have played, you know, all those playoff series, regular season series, it's been all about the brawling style of the bigs from Memphis and just the really tough inside nature of those guys. And the Thunder always had to figure out a way to, beat Memphis at their own game. And, they did obviously won a lot of games against Memphis over the last couple of years. But the other night we saw them win by dictating that small ball style and a more up-tempo, fluid type of style against Memphis. Memphis wasn't able to control things like they have in so many other games against the Thunder. So to me, that was the thing about the way that game went that was promising beyond just, one game. I think it showed that a team that has had trouble figuring out, how to counter a really dominant and imposing style of play, the Thunder has found something that works. And you got to think it's going to work against other teams with other styles.
Enough of the fill in the blank. How'd they do it, Anthony?
Am I doing the fill in the blank?
Oh, if you must.
I was going to say worthy of a bookmark. I mean, you guys kind of hit all the main points already. But I think this is a potential bookmark down the road for if this Thunder team plays the Grizzlies in the playoffs, which they always seem to do. I think they figured Memphis out a little bit. I think that it might have been more. The Thunder have had some really good games this season. They went to Utah, and they looked just as good as they did the other night. But I thought the other night was more telling about Memphis and where they're kind of falling off to. They're aging. Zach Randolph couldn't go to work on Durant in the post. Like, let's say this was 3-4 years ago. That would have been a mismatch for the Thunder. Yesterday, the other day, it was just a complete mismatch for Memphis. So I just think, like I said, I just think it's something that down the road, if we're preparing to cover a Thunder Grizzlies series, we need to remember that game.
Let's stay with this question of Durant in the post for a second. Anthony wants to write a story and develop on it. Hey, Barry, this was a guy who couldn't bench press 185 pounds when he was coming in the league. The splendid splinter who was a mindless gunner. And all of a sudden now he's wrestling with the bear. What happened?
He looks really comfortable in there, for one thing. We saw him last time they played the Hawks. He was in there doing a great job in the interior. I think he's just sort of learned the nuances of interior defense and sort of likes the challenge. He looks to me like he's really embraced the challenge. And what was most telling is, in years past, when the Thunder's gone small and Grizzlies stayed big, they always assigned Durant to Marc Gasol because he stood out there at the high post, shot his set shots, made the passes. But the other night, Durant on Zach Randolph. Now, Zebo's not the player he once was, but he's still a load inside, and Durant embraced and accepted the challenge.
Yeah. He did it to Horford. I want to see him tonight. I think there's going to be a lot of him guarding Al Horford potentially in the post. A few things why I think he's getting better. If we're just looking at this season, Monty Williams literally works with him every day after practice on a number of things, but at least 5 to 10 minutes of that is Monty Williams posting him up. And Monty Williams will post him up and then, take 2 dribbles into him, and then they'll sit there and talk about it. And then he'll do it again, and they'll talk about it. Monty Williams talks specifically to him about, your positioning on a post up, how to take first contact, how to take second contact, when to maybe try to take a charge, that type of stuff. I think Williams has had a huge impact on him for post defense and really on a lot of things because he really respects Monty Williams. And then the other thing is, if you just stand next to Kevin Durant, I mean, he's like he every year seems to be come back bigger and bigger. He's got, he's still got that elongated body that makes it look like he's kind of a skinny, weak guy. But, I mean, he's strong in the core, strong in the legs, strong enough to take hits from Al Horford, from a Zach Randolph, and hold his position. His second, third, fourth year in the league, we could not say that.
It strikes me also that he's not as prone to leave his feet and go for ball fakes as much or shot fakes as some other players. Serge Ibaka comes to mind. And it looks like the old Durant in the Big 12 looks sometimes like he could block shots without ever leaving his feet. He's contesting them too. So
yeah, if he actually blocked an Al Horford shot in Atlanta basically without jumping, that is the other thing. That's the number one thing that makes him a pretty good post defender. He's just his wingspan so much bigger than almost all the centers in the league.
It's a physical challenge. We'll see how he's up to it going down the road. Guys, next question. The Thunder is better than, worse than, or exactly what its record shows? Anthony.
I'd say, right around what it shows, it maybe even a little bit better. I mean, if you look at the advanced numbers, we're talking about the second best offensively efficient team in the league. Their defense is really climbing. They're up to 9th, 10th in the league at about 99.9 points per 100 possessions, basically. And anywhere under 100 is pretty solid. So their defense has climbed a ton lately. They're a great rebounding team. Their net difference is 3rd in the league. Golden State's far and away above everyone, just like their record says they should be. The Spurs are a good chunk ahead of the Thunder, just like their record says they should be. And the Thunder are 3rd in the league in net efficiency, and they have the 3rd best record in the West. So I think it's right around what it should be.
Jenny?
Sorry, I was muted and I realized it. I think they're maybe a little better than the record shows, but you got to close out games. And obviously those fourth quarter issues that they had, that's definitely cost them numerous victories. You're bound to lose a fourth quarter lead here and there, but they've obviously squandered some huge situations already. But I think that, maybe they're getting ready to turn a corner. I think the last week or so has seemed more solid down the stretch. So maybe that's over with. Maybe they've got that figured out. But, clearly there's still issues. The perimeter defense is an issue. The offensive flow still gets a little stagnant sometimes. So, if you're having those sorts of issues, you do lose leads from time to time. So I would say they're maybe a little bit better than their record would say, but not much, because you've got to be able to close out games. You can't give away victories. That's where it really separates the top teams in the NBA and the teams that aren't in the mix.
Barry, you and I were looking at some numbers. John Schulman of NBA.com has looked at point differential. He said the Thunder has a record of a 16-5 team, not a 13-8 team. You buy that?
Well, I buy it in terms of historically, point differential is a very good gauge of a team's long-term success. And the Thunder, basically what Jackie O was saying, the Thunder's lost some games, some close games. Their record in close games, not great this year. Those things tend to even out. So I think the Thunder is better than its record, and I think we'll continue to see that record climb.
Eric?
Yeah, I mean, I know what you guys are saying, but the problem is, it's not like it's a bounce of bad luck in these late games. It's them screwing up in late games. It's them taking shots they shouldn't take, having turnovers they shouldn't, being stagnant, letting Jeff Teague or Derrick Rose get switches. So I think their record's bad in fourth quarter in tight games because they've played poorly in those tight games. So I think they should have lost those games, in my opinion.
How about it, Eric? You got the final word on this question.
They're better than their record shows. I mean, Anthony makes a good point about them supposed to win in those close games and them playing poorly in those stretches. But like Anthony said, advanced stats show that they're in the top of the league in a lot of areas. They clean up the fourth quarter problems and some of the issues they have with consistency closing out games, then they'll be fine. They've only had one game where they've lost by double digits so far, I believe. So those things, like Barry said, will even out. And I think that 2 or 3 games could have swung their way, and it would be pretty close to what Sherman from NBA.com said. They should be around that 16-win mark probably.
Eric, I'll come back to you to start this next question. You're just coming off the road. You're in Memphis. Anthony will have you come in second. Where have all the questions about Kevin Durant's free agency gone? We thought this season that every stop there would be the constant where you're going to go, where you're leaning. What's happened to those questions? And did you even hear any in Memphis, Eric?
Not one. I think that his play is kind of overshadowing the questions in himself. And also, I think that Golden State as a whole is overshadowing a lot of storylines around the league. You've got Cleveland. They've gotten off to a good start. San Antonio's playing their butt off, and they're playing at a highly efficient rate. The Thunder put up a great number against the Grizzlies last night and might have put together their most complete performance of the year. But this streak that Golden State has going on has captivated everybody. So I think that's pushed a lot of major storylines to the back burner.
Anthony, how about the Durant free agency? Where would you rate it at?
Well, I think you just got to look at where he's been. I mean, he's not going to face any free agency questions in Memphis against that media. Nobody in Memphis is, confused enough to believe he's going to go there. When he was in D.C., we know what he faced. He faced a wave of it in that whole thing. He has not been to L.A. yet. That's actually coming later this month. He hasn't been to New York yet. He will face some then. He will face an onslaught of it at All-Star Weekend in Toronto. But it's, he just hasn't been to a lot of places. The one place I was surprised was Miami. It had been rumored. The Heat have obviously got big free agents in the past. They lined it up so they could go after him. And he had 2 or 3 media availabilities in Miami, and nobody asked him a question about that. I think partially it's out of respect for him, and in another way is how he's answered it. Like, he really shot down that Stephen A. Smith rumor, and I think maybe that's kind of made other reporters wary of bringing it up with him.
Barry, any surprise that this hadn't been more of a storyline, at least that Durant's had to answer more questions about it?
No, but I think what Eric the Red said really holds, which is other things have overshown it, including within the Thunder. I mean, if the Thunder was 16-5 and everything's going smooth, we wouldn't be sitting around talking about how great they are. We'd be talking about what's going to happen with Durant. But when you got forest fires a lot closer to town, with this team getting off to the sluggish start and Durant's injury and then losing a couple of home games maybe you didn't think they should lose, with some of the defensive breakdowns earlier. Those are the things you focus on, and you worry about this season and this here and now rather than in the future. I think AC is right. I think we'll see more and more of this build up. What's interesting to me, though, is that how some of the teams that seem to be in line for potential suitors have lost a little bit of their luster. I mean, this idea that Washington is some sort of up-and-coming team, the Wizards have been very mediocre this year, and does not look like a team you really want to hitch your wagon to. So there's more teams like that as well. So I think it's an interesting development, but I think it will pick up.
Yeah, the thing with the NBA is, like, what's the storyline right now? In Washington, it's like they got to figure themselves out. Where I really think we'll see some, like I said, is All-Star Weekend, when suddenly, it's like an off time for actual NBA basketball, and the off-court free agency type things become storylines.
It's a long time from now. Jenny, how about Los Angeles? The Lakers seem to certainly have lost their way too. Does that put a damper at all on the KD Laker dreaming out there in Los Angeles?
Probably not. I mean, I think that they've got to see Durant as a fix to all that has ailed them for several seasons now, a chance to get another superstar into that Laker universe. So, no, I don't think so at all. And obviously, Kobe comes to town on the 19th, and then there'll be a trip to L.A. I believe the Thunder plays the Clippers and the Lakers 2 out of 3 nights. So they'll be in L.A. for an extended period of time when they do go out there. No, I mean, I think that there's going to still be a lot of talk about, could they potentially land Durant, what he could do to rejuvenate that franchise. They've clearly got some young talent, although a couple of those guys got benched. So, how good are they? Where could they go? I mean, is Byron Scott the guy? I don't know. I think there's just a lot of questions, but clearly if you can get a superstar like Kevin Durant, that starts to fix a lot of that stuff.
Really working in Oklahoma City's favor is a lot of these what look like destinations are sort of decimated. The Lakers would be starting over around Durant. The Wizards certainly have some building blocks, but they're all harmed. Miami perhaps is a place, but that's really changed the conversation. A couple more questions, guys. Let's go with Kyle Singler. Barry, is Kyle Singler really this bad?
No chance. Could not be this bad. You can fumble the ball. If you'll play 10 minutes with Kevin Durant or Russell Westbrook, you can just drop a ball and they'll pick it up and throw it in and you get an assist. So for him to have 0 assists through 180 minutes or whatever it is,
he's over 200 now.
Over 200 minutes, no assists. It's just absurd. So he's better than this. He can't play this badly.
Anthony, what do you attribute this to?
Well, one quick thing. He should have had an assist the other night. Cameron Payne missed a 3 that would have got him his first assist and got him off the schneid. Maybe some of it has to do with the contract. Maybe he's feeling a little bit of pressure. I mean, he locked into a 5-year, $25 million deal. But a lot of it is just, it's a little confusing to me because he's 27. He should be in his prime now. He was pretty consistently the same player in Detroit, which was, a solid, nice little, back end of the rotation type player. The guy they traded for, really, a 38, 39% three-point shooter, a guy that could play good enough defense, could finish at least, relatively well this season. I mean, I think he's got something like 51 shots and only 35 points. Can't hit anything, even when he's wide open, and teams are starting to leave him wide open, and he's still not hitting threes. It's been a little bit strange to watch. I think his confidence is shot at this point. And now, he's out of the rotation pretty much completely.
Boy, quite a far leap from the John Havlicek coming to town that you were telling us on the Hangout the day of the trade deadline, Anthony. Eric, what do you see in Singler that explains any of this?
It's a confidence issue. When he gets out there, he's fouling at a high rate, and I think that contributes to a lot of his issues is because teams are going at him when he gets out there, and he's trying. It's not for a lack of effort. It's just he's picking up these fouls in such a quick rate that it seems like he's kind of getting down on himself when he is, and then the ball's not falling for him when he does get the few shots he does. So, he had a nice dunk against the Grizzlies. It seems like everybody got points against the Grizzlies. He had a nice play at in the previous home game where the bench got real excited when he scored. So he's had some more of those splash plays in the past couple games that seemed like it could be a turning point for him in terms of his confidence. But in order for him to get consistent to consistently better, he's going to have to get more minutes or get back into the rotation. And, I mean, do we foresee that happening anytime soon? Probably not.
It shouldn't.
Jenny?
No, it shouldn't.
Jenny, I don't really buy this pressure of the contract explanation. I don't hear talk radio lit up with people decrying all the money Singler's being paid. We have not yet written a story headlined, how bad is Kyle Singler playing? We've written about it, but not having produced a story on it. The pressure, I don't know. Is it possible he's just not very good?
Well, I mean, there's definitely evidence to back up your theory, Sherm. I mean, he's struggling in pretty much every way you can imagine, whether it's, on the defensive end, on the offensive end, shooting, passing. I mean, just all of it is a struggle. But I think it was Anthony that said, this guy was not, it wasn't a superstar in Detroit, but he was a serviceable NBA player. He had not nearly the supporting cast around him in Detroit that he has in Oklahoma City, and yet he was able to be more effective, in every way, in every aspect of the game. So it's a strange thing, and I think it has to be in his head at this point. I mean, I just can't imagine that. He hasn't had anything physical happen that we know. He's still playing. He hasn't missed any time. So it has to be a mental thing, and it may not be a pressure. Maybe there was nothing to the idea of pressure with the contract, but here he is. He finds himself on a contending team, and he's playing, and he wants to play well, and then it doesn't go well, and suddenly you find yourself questioning everything. So to me, it seems like he can't have gone downhill this far, this fast. He was better not too long ago, and now here we are wondering, why the Thunder is hooked up even at a low rate, even at $5 million, but for 5 years. I mean, we're sitting here thinking, man, this does not look good for the Thunder.
Barry, I can't remember a Thunder player since the franchise got here struggling like this guy is. But last question on him, does it even matter? I mean, does Kyle Singler's fate matter to the Thunder in the big picture?
The only way it matters is if Kevin Durant gets hurt again, and they actually need a 6'8", 6'9" forward to play quite a bit. If Durant gets hurt again, of course, the ship's sinking anyway, so it's a small matter. But if Durant's healthy, Singler's sort of beside the point. Anthony Morrow can play. Dion Waiters, they've got guys that can play there.
It doesn't matter in the short term because he's out of the rotation, but to me it matters because, as Jenny said, this guy's under contract until 2020, and they got a lot of guys to sign in the next few years: Durant, Westbrook, Ibaka, Steven Adams coming up. And it's just money on the books that looks like basically empty money at this point.
Final question, guys. A yes or no response and a one-sentence explanation. The Thunder is 5-6 against the East. The East, in the form of the Atlanta Hawks, is in town tonight. So I ask you, is the West no longer the best? Eric?
Yes or no? Yes, the West is still the best, but it's getting tighter at the top.
Barry?
I thought you asked it very funny. I didn't know whether
is the West still best?
The answer is no. The answer is no.
Really?
If you look at the record so far, it's 500. They're 500 against each other this year, and you're seeing a lot more good teams, competitive teams in the middle of the East, which is where the problem was. After the top 3 or 4 in the East in years past is a big drop-off. What you've seen in the West is teams we didn't really think were that, teams we thought were really good are declining. Memphis, Houston among them. The Clippers are starting to, sort of like the Thunder, playing better. But, I think that strength of the West, which was 4, 5, 6, 7 in years past, it seems to me that the East is as good as the West at 4, 5, 6, 7.
Jenny, is the West still best?
I don't know, but that was the longest one-sentence answer ever, Barry. Come on. Yes, the West is still best. The teams that are struggling will get it together. It'll still be tough to come out of the West.
Anthony?
Yes, it's best because it has 4 of the 5 best teams in the NBA. The Warriors, the Spurs, the Thunder, and the Clippers. The Cavs are in there. Those are the top 5 teams in the league, and 4 of them are in the West. The West is better.
I'm going to say no, it is not the best. I throw the Clippers out of there, and I think it's not the best anymore because of teams like the Boston Celtics. The Celtics.
Oh, what? That's an early season trend.
Okay.
Does anyone think that the Celtics would beat the Clippers in the series?
I do.
No.
Yes, I do.
No.
Yes, I do.
You're confused then.
I must live in Memphis, according to you. The calls come in from Memphis. That's all for this edition of Thunder Thursday, but you can stay with the best coverage team every day at News OK and every morning in the Oklahoman, and you can get all the good Thunder news, the best anywhere, by downloading the News OK app, going to Inbox. Set your inbox for Russell Westbrook, Kevin Durant, Thunder, and the names of all these good writers delivered right to your smartphone.